Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus Today. Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the prison riots and the prison known as the Attica Prison in New York State. Now, it's up near Buffalo, New York, so up in the northern side of New York State. It must get pretty cold up there. So the prison it's got somewhere in the order of 2,000 inmates, and these are the hardened criminals. So these are the ones that are getting 25 years plus. They're career criminals. They've been criminals since 10 years old. They've committed multiple offences. They've committed at least 3 criminal offences, and so on. So these are if they're criminals that are considered to be difficult or intractable in other prisons, they get sent to Attica. So this is the most violent criminals in the state of New York. And then again, this is the early 1970s. So again, just sort of giving a little bit of background here, the prisoners that are, as I understand, about 70% black, 10%, give or take, Hispanic, primarily Puerto Rican, from what I can gather, and give or take 20% white is the makeup there. Now, the prison guards, as is repeatedly pointed out in these propaganda, supposed documentaries, but really just propaganda, all the prison guards are white, and this is touted as, well, white supremacy. They're all white. Hitler, Nazi, fascist, swastika. So they go straight for that narrative and push it really all the way through. And there's been a few documentaries and coverages of this that have come out of the last few years, and they're all woke bullshit, race hustling and grifting, and trying to retell the story or retell the event, not in any factual sense. But rather to present it as simply another example of white supremacy, fascist, Nazi, Hitler, again, the same thing we get here every fucking day these days. So what are the facts, though? Now, everywhere you go now, the whole event has been rewritten to reflect the propaganda values of the current day. It is actually quite difficult to get the facts on what happened in Attica State prison riots at the time. But I'll put together as best I can what happened and also explain the misrepresentation, the lies, and the propaganda. Now, we're talking, again, hardened criminals here. And if you sort of dig up the facts of how many of these criminals are killing each other during the day, or beating each other senseless, or maiming and killing each other in the prison, then you'll get some idea as to just how violent these offenders are. So it's not a pleasant job being a prison guard with that many people there who are many of whom are extremely violent criminals with a history of violence, and again, career criminals. These are people that are probably never get out of prison, and people that are in prison for that long, they kind of don't have so much to lose. And so they're even more dangerous to someone else who may, say, get out early or quickly on some sort of good behavior. They're not really a career criminal, and they'll go back to something resembling a normal life. But these aren't people who've got that to look forward to or any possibility of it. So that nothing to lose mentality is makes them even more dangerous again. But again, they're hardened, career brutal, murderous criminals in prison. So the idea of trying to represent them as being the good guys, fighting back against racism and oppression is beyond absurd. Nonetheless, let's have a look at it now. I guess what happened was there was a claim that the guards assaulted a prisoner. It was indicated for no reason, or they just decided to beat some prisoner up, which I don't believe. But not that the guards that work in those places aren't themselves hardened and become themselves brutish over time. I think it would be like a form of osmosis when you're surrounded by that many hardened criminals and you're in fear for your life every day. Then you would become hardened to that and would become maybe a less pleasant person overall. Now, it's different. All the prison officers, and they lived in the local area. They had families to go to, and they had, wives and children, and brothers and sisters, and all that sort of stuff. That would have kept them, sort of in sync with society generally, I suppose. But again, at work. Now, I've known, I went to a martial arts club for a while some years ago, and it was a training ground for prison officers, which I hadn't realised when I started there. But the people that were prison officers, you could see one of them came from a high security prison, and his whole thing was everyone's trying to deceive you, everyone's trying to cheat you, everyone's trying to con you, and that was his sort of, it was ingrained into him, and so I can imagine that the prison officers would not be, especially in a high security prison with murderers everywhere you look, wouldn't be the most genteel citizens you could ever meet. Nonetheless, they're there to do that job, and people that were of frail disposition probably couldn't do the job anyway. So now there was supposedly an interaction, an unpleasant one, between the prison guards and the prisoners decided to riot, and there was a key sort of major security door that apparently was not maintained well enough, and the security door was actually broken down by the prisoners, and they came in and they managed to capture 30-odd prison guards as hostages, and then demanded that the authorities acquiesce to their demands. Now, some of the demands are, I don't know, they're pretty basic, like they wanted better food. Now, the claim was that they were being starved to death, but all the photographs of and all the footage and the reels of the prisoners suggest that lack of food is not among their problems. There was a lot of very, very fit-looking people there, and also people that clearly were nowhere near living on a starvation diet. So that was number one. Number two was the claim that their uniforms and bed sheets were only cleaned once a month. So unless the uniforms, the prison uniforms, were cleaned the day before they rioted, then that doesn't hold up. The bed sheets and the towels that they were using to cover their faces also looked remarkably clean, so that doesn't hold up. There was a claim. Let's assume it is, though. Let's assume it is for the moment that the sheets and the uniforms weren't being washed frequently. There was actually a laundry in the prison, so the idea that they couldn't wash or couldn't wash the, I don't know, and doesn't seem to add up to me. But nonetheless, there was a claim also that the medical care was insufficient. This was fairly vague, so it's hard to say. There were some prisoners complaining that another prisoner had beaten them badly, and they wanted to have medical attention, but the doctor or the medical nurse or whatever it was wasn't on duty that day, or didn't come on to the next day or something, and therefore that the medical attention was inadequate. And the argument is, well, us prisoners, because we're so busy beating each other up all the time and trying to kill and maim each other, we need 24/7 top line medical care, because we're always trying to kill each other. I mean, don't you understand that's how it is in prison with so many psychotic and violent people? So, I get the point. I mean, they should have medical care, but the prison authorities seem to take the thing, well, if you black people are so busy killing each other and maiming each other and stabbing each other, why should we go to the cost of top of the range medical care? Why don't you guys just stop trying to kill each other and maim each other? Maybe that's a solution. But this was treated in the documentary of no. It's the lack of medical care that's the problem. Now, I'm not sure I buy that. Should medical care be there? I think it should be. So that I would agree with. But the idea that the medical care should be raised to a standard commensurate with the desire of the black prisoners to kill and maim each other, then that I don't. What, do you have a whole hospital there? I mean, what do you do? So the presentation of the problems that they supposedly faced. Now, So the main concern is we want better food, we want better laundry facilities, or more regular use of laundry facilities, and we want better medical care. Okay, well, I mean, yeah, all right then. I mean, that's. But the claim is that we're being starved doesn't hold up. The claim that they can't have access to laundry facilities doesn't hold up. The claim that they need medical care just because they're trying to maim and kill each other. I mean, seriously? So when you go through the list of demands, now there was claims that the guards, prison guards, this is, had like a goon squad, so that they would just rando go around to, they'd lock everyone up like at night, everyone's put in their cells, and they'd come around to a particular prisoner's cell and beat the crap out of them. Now, the way it was presented is for no reason. They just randoed and said, we'll beat the crap out of so-and-so and so-and-so. There's also a claim the beatings there were so bad that they couldn't get medical care till the next day and so on. Some prisoners allegedly died, or so is the claim. That didn't appear to be much evidence for that. The greater evidence appeared to be the prisoners killing each other. But anyway, I don't doubt that in a prison with hardened, murderous, psychotic criminals like that there wasn't a prison guard. I would say that that's probably true, that there was that. The idea that they were just randomly picking on prisoners for no reason and beating the crap out of that, I don't believe. I think it would be problem prisoners that they would go after and would beat up. Should they be doing the beat up? Well, no. That's not how you should treat anybody. But the view of the prison guards, we're dealing with the most murderous, psychotic people. They're already in prison for another 30 years. They're not frightened of legal sanction. We're going to take them to court, and the judge wags the fingers. I'm going to add 5 years to your sentence. Oh, like, who gives a fuck? So what do they understand? Solitary confinement? Well, yeah, maybe that's a thought. Or what do they respond? They only respond to fear and beating is the view. Now that probably does hold up to some degree, but is it the way you should run a prison? Well, of course not. What else can they do with people that are that hardened? Is it solitary, or what? I don't know how you deal with people who are in the murderous, psychotic people. What do you do? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. Should you have goon squads beating the crowd? Well, no, but I don't know how else to do it. Not that I would ever condone it or use it. Now, in some cases, these prisoners had supposedly attacked the prison guards. So the goon squad went around to let them know that, hey, you can't do that, and we're going to beat you up if you do that. So, in the midst of such a charged criminal, psychotic, career criminal atmosphere, can you imagine those sort of things happening? Well, yeah. But again, it's no way, I think, to run a detention centre. So you look at the complaints the prisoners made, and some of them seem, well, okay, I mean, the prison authorities should have acted on some of those anyway. Some I just don't believe, the idea they're being starved to death. And you look at the people, the rioters, and they seem to be in pretty good condition. So some of them seem very fit. So they must have access to gym facilities and so on to be that fit. But anyway, what else do they want? They didn't want reprisals so they particularly wanted to say, well, even though we've had a riot and we've slapped prison guards around and we've even killed a prison guard, we don't want any reprisals. You can't come back. That's probably a tall order. And they wanted the commissioner of the prison system and various other people, local politicians, and they even requested the governor come to them. And you're listening to the thing. We have the power now. We have the power. You have to do what we say. And I don't think that was ever going to fly. But the depiction is that there wasn't one person who was interviewed, not one, and certainly the documentaries that I've seen, which have been made recently with money, by the way, paid through USA to activist NGOs. So it's a pure propaganda play, for fuck's sake. Not one prison guard was interviewed. Not one member of the prison authorities was interviewed. Every interview was done by every interview was the prisoners, and they were interviewed very, very sympathetically. And there was no mention of the crimes they committed. I mean, some of these people have committed like 3 murders and, an armed robbery and a savage beating, which has left somebody paralyzed. None of this is mentioned. The prisoners bring in, hey, here's Billy Bob. And Billy Bob's telling us how evil and bad white people are. And we'll just let that run. We don't want to say that Billy Bob's a fucking mass murderer. So, let's just leave that out. So in no stage they'll be said this is an ex-prisoner, but at no stage are they presented in any other light other than being a very good, very reasonable, very sensible person who's just fighting back against racism. We're just fighting racism. That's all we're doing. We're just fighting Hitler. So we're the good guys. It's them who are the bad guys. Now, the crimes of the prison authorities were, and all the prison guards were white. Oh, fuck Hitler. So, and that's bad. How? I mean, how is that bad? I mean, what if the prison guards were all black? Would that be a good thing? Or you're looking in prisons, say, in Washington, D.C., where the January 6th defendants were put, where all the prison guards are black in there. Why isn't that depicted as a bad thing? But it only seems to be one way. It's only when the people are white that it's considered as bad. Anything else is good and virtuous in the retelling of this. So then they would sort of interview members of the family, who are now older people. But so they say, my father was killed in with a prison guard. My father was a prison guard, and he was killed, or he was beaten, or this or that, or he was held hostage. Now you can tell from the surviving wives and the children of the prison guards that these are not particularly sophisticated people, and I doubt sophisticated people would be putting their hands up for this sort of work. They lived in an area of New York with New York State with quite a low cost of living. So, salaries that were, ordinary in, say, downtown New York City were quite livable in those remote areas. The biggest employer in the town or the village was the prison. The prison guards, administrators, and people, businesses involved in, say, farms maybe, in supplying food to the prison, that sort of thing. So the whole town was dependent on the prison and the jobs that it in turn generated, and it was like any small town, sort of working class, lower middle class people, and again, given the main employer being the main job being prison guards and prison administrators, there were not a lot of high IQ geniuses there. Any kid who had any ambition at all would get out of the place and go to the cities for employment. And it was quite obvious, again, listening to the children of the prison guards, these were not sophisticated people. And I often wonder, in jobs like prison guards and police sort of chasing drug addicts or something, that somehow the two sides of the coin almost fuse together. The police become as bad as the folks they're chasing. The prison guards become as bad as the prisoners they're guarding. I think some sort of osmosis process happens in those type of situations. Now, there were outbursts where the prison guards had been held hostage for days, and their relatives were getting rather irate. Why are the authorities just not acting here? Why is this dragging on day after day? Why are we seeing things in the news of prisoners demanding this and being given a platform to demand that, and why are they allowed to keep my father hostage, and this sort of stuff, and keep my husband hostage? And so there would be some outbursts out in the front of the prison where, I hope all those fucking people get shot, that type of, and these are depicted and used in the documentaries. So, look at those evil white fucking racists. Just look at them. Hey, and none of the outbursts, the angry and brutish outbursts from the black people that were there, and there's plenty of those. Now, all of those are edited out. And again, they're presented as being a little bit excitable, perhaps, but otherwise reasonable. They're reasonable, sensible people. So what if they've murdered several folks and they're hardened, lifelong criminals? So what? So what? They're black, and the people who are imprisoning are white. This is a race, grifting, hustling issue. Nothing to do with whether they're prisoners or committed crimes or not. So this is how the Attica State thing. Now, in the end, the authorities did lose patience, particularly after one of the hostages died. They were beaten to death effectively by the prisoners, and that sort of ended the patience thing. And then they just went in, guns a blazing, and a whole lot of people got shot. It didn't end well, by the way. I don't know what they could have done to make it end well, given how the prisoners had changed the prison guards out of their uniforms and put them in prison uniforms, so they couldn't. There's no way that the police and everyone, the National Guard that was going, there's no way they could tell who were the prisoners and who were the inmates. So it was never going to end well, and the prisoners dug their heels in making demands that were never. Some of the demands were, you have to give us a plane so we can all fly to Cuba and go to a communist country. Now, the other thing in the scripting today of the coverage of the Attica State Prison riots is they use all the modern woke buzzwords. Similarly, there's the Black Panthers, which was like a black nationalist type movement in the 60s and 70s. They at the time were using textbook Marxist propaganda of class struggle and race struggle and all this sort of thing, classic stuff. And the prison authorities, I think, made a mistake putting some Black Panthers into the prisons, and they worked as nothing but this just gave them a captive audience so they could play Marxist agitator, which they did. And so a lot of the demands these prisoners, particularly the black ones, were making were again straight out of the Marxist playbook. But that's the thing. My concern was how they're rewriting history here, to suggest the whole thing was simply a race struggle, fighting back against white supremacy, when it was never that. It's bullshit to depict it as that. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.